Welcome to today's devotional message from Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window, the glass cool against your forehead, or maybe slumped at the kitchen table, the untouched mug sending tendrils of steam into the quiet air. Perhaps you're walking alone under a sky that feels vast and distant, each step echoing the emptiness within. You've poured out your heart, messy, raw, vulnerable, laid bare your deepest needs, your biggest fears, your most desperate hopes before God. You've used the right words, perhaps even fasted, seeking that breakthrough moment. And the answer you've received isn't a booming voice from heaven, a sudden, undeniable sign, or even a gentle, comforting whisper that stills the chaos. It's silence. A heavy, aching silence that presses in, suffocating the fragile hope that dared to bloom. It makes you wonder if your prayers even made it past the ceiling, if the words dissolved somewhere between your lips and the throne room. You find yourself scrolling through Scripture, rereading the glorious promises of answered prayer, of God moving mountains. You see others sharing testimonies of sudden provision, miraculous healing, relationships restored. And a quiet, insidious question begins to echo in the lonely spaces of your soul. God, are you still there? Do you see me? Do you care about this? About my pain, my lack, my specific, tearing need? The silence isn't just an absence of sound. It feels like an absence of God's action, maybe even His very presence. It feels like waiting at a door that simply won't open, no matter how many times you knock. Like waiting for a letter that holds the key to everything. But it never arrives. Like scanning the horizon for a sign that remains stubbornly hidden. You might be waiting for healing. Physical healing that would end the chronic pain. Emotional healing from deep-seated wounds. Spiritual healing from past failures that cling to you like a shroud. You might be waiting for a relationship to be restored, for a loved one who has wandered far from the path to return. Perhaps you're waiting for a job to appear when the bills are piling up, a financial breakthrough when the weight of debt feels crushing, or simply for clarity in a season of confusion where every path forward seems shrouded in fog. The waiting stretches on, days blurring into weeks, weeks into months, sometimes even years, and the enemy of your soul, the accuser, loves to exploit this quiet space. He slips into the silence, a venomous whisper, planting seeds of doubt. You're forgotten. Your needs aren't important enough for God's attention. He doesn't answer this kind of prayer. Not for you. He points to your past failures, your perceived unworthiness, the times you stumbled and fell, suggesting that this waiting is somehow a consequence of your shortcomings or a sign of God's displeasure. He tells you to give up, that hope is a fool's errand, that the silence is your answer. But deep within you, beneath the layers of fatigue, disappointment, and perhaps even a touch of despair, there's something else, a flicker, a tiny ember of faith that, despite the cold silence, refuses to be extinguished entirely. It's a memory of His past faithfulness in a different season, a verse that keeps returning to your mind like a persistent melody, a quiet assurance that somewhere, somehow, God is still God. He is still on his throne. He is still sovereign. This feeling, this tension between the heavy silence that seems to mock your prayers and the persistent flicker of hope that clings to truth, this is the landscape of waiting. This is where faith is not seen, but felt, not heard, but held onto. And if you find yourself in this space today, feeling the weight of the unanswered prayer, the quiet ache of the delay, this message is for you. It's not about offering easy answers or empty platitudes that dismiss your pain. It's about acknowledging the reality of the silence, sitting with the discomfort of the waiting, and discovering that sometimes the most profound work God does in your life is unseen, unheard, in the quiet depths where faith is tested and refined. You are not forgotten. He is not absent, and the waiting, while undeniably painful, is not pointless. It is a crucible. She sits in the same worn chair, the one by the window, overlooking a street that bustles with lives moving forward, while hers feels frozen. The silence from above feels thicker today, a physical pressure in the air. It's been months, maybe years, since the prayer was first whispered, a desperate plea for something vital, something that felt necessary for life to continue meaningfully. The silence wasn't always this heavy. At first, there was a hopeful expectation, a scanning of the horizon for the approaching ship of God's answer. But as the seasons turned and the silence remained, the hope became a fragile thing, easily buffeted by the winds of doubt. The enemy's whispers are louder now, insidious suggestions that the prayer was presumptuous, that her faith wasn't strong enough, that God simply isn't interested in this particular problem. He paints pictures of others whose prayers were answered swiftly, their faith seemingly rewarded with immediate miracles. He contrasts their visible blessings with her invisible struggle, leaving her feeling like an outcast in the community of the faithful. But she remembers the stories. Stories whispered in the quiet corners of ancient texts. Stories of Abraham waiting decades for a son, of Moses spending 40 years in the wilderness before confronting Pharaoh, of Joseph languishing in a pit and a prison before reaching the palace. Stories of a Savior born in a humble stable, living 30 quiet years before 3 years of public ministry, enduring the ultimate silence of the tomb before the deafening roar of resurrection. The divine pattern, she realizes, isn't always instant intervention. Sometimes it is the long, slow, arduous work of waiting. It is in the wilderness, not the promised land, that Israel learned to depend on daily manna, on water from a rock, on God alone. It was in the waiting that their identity was forged, their faith tested, their dependence shifted from their own strength to His supernatural provision. The waiting isn't necessarily a punishment. It can be a preparation, a season where God is doing deep, foundational work within you, work that cannot happen amidst the noise and distractions of answered prayers. He is cultivating perseverance, deepening your roots of trust, revealing the idols you unknowingly clung to, and shifting your focus from the gift to the giver. This internal, unseen work is often more profound than the external answer you seek. It is the refining fire that purifies faith like gold, burning away the dross of self-reliance and shallow expectation. It's the quiet cultivation of spiritual resilience, the ability to stand firm, not because the storm has passed, but because you know the one who commands the winds and waves, even when he seems silent. The silence isn't an absence of God's work. It is often the sound of Him working in ways you cannot yet perceive. Like a seed buried in the earth, there is intense activity happening beneath the surface, preparing for the breakthrough that we come in His perfect timing. So, if you are in the silence, feeling the weight of the unanswered, lean not on your own understanding of what should be happening. Lean into the quiet confidence that God is sovereign, God is good, and God is working even when you cannot see or hear Him. Trust the unseen hand. Trust the unhurried timeline. Trust that the silence is not a sign of His neglect, but perhaps a sacred space where He is teaching your soul a deeper melody of faith, preparing you not just for the answer, but for the person He wants you to become in the process. You are not forgotten in the waiting. You are being forged. She kneels again, not because her prayer changed, but because hope refused to die. The battle isn't just with the external circumstance. It's with the narrative the enemy spins in the quiet moments. The whispers of unworthiness, of being overlooked by God. The cold logic that says, if God cared, He would have acted by now. This internal warfare is often more exhausting than the waiting itself. It drains the spirit, dims the light of faith, and makes the silence feel like a confirmation of the enemy's lies. You feel a profound loneliness, a sense that while the world spins on, you are stuck in this frozen moment, invisible to the one who holds the universe. The biblical image of the wilderness feels acutely real, a barren testing place where resources are scarce and the path forward is unclear. Yet, the wilderness in Scripture was also the place where God met His people, where He provided miraculously, where He spoke intimately from a burning bush or a pillar of cloud. The wilderness is not an abandoned place. It is often an appointed place. Consider the paradox. You seek a loud, undeniable sign, but God offers a quiet strength. You ask for the mountain to move, but He provides the faith to climb it, step by agonizing step. You pray for the destination, but He perfects you in the journey. These gentle paradoxes are woven into the fabric of His work. His power is made perfect in weakness, 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. His wisdom is foolishness to the world, 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25. And His greatest victory came through apparent defeat on a cross. So too, in the silence, His presence is often felt most deeply, not in a sudden rescue, but in the quiet persistence He breathes into your soul. The quiet courage to face another day, the quiet refusal to let go of the promise. He meets your anxiety about the future, not always with immediate answers, but with a profound, unshakable peace that transcends understanding. Philippians 4, 6-7. He meets your fear of loss, not by guaranteeing outcomes, but by reminding you that He is your ultimate security, the rock on which you stand. Psalm 62, 6. He meets your doubt about His presence, not with a booming voice, but with the steady, inner witness of the Holy Spirit, affirming His love and faithfulness. Romans 8:16. The waiting, the silence. It is a season where God is cultivating a deeper level of intimacy and dependence. He is teaching you to listen for the whispers, to discern His movement, not just in the dramatic, but in the subtle and unseen. It's a time to tend the flame of your faith, like the wise virgins in the parable, ensuring your lamp is filled with oil, ready for the bridegroom's arrival, whenever that may be. Matthew 25, 1-13. The oil is your steady trust, your consistent seeking, your quiet confidence in His character, even when His hand seems hidden. This season is forging a reliance on God Himself, not just His gifts. It is building a foundation of faith that cannot be shaken by circumstances, because it is anchored in the unchangeable nature of God, His love, His sovereignty, His perfect timing. It is a call to surrender the how and when to Him and simply trust the who. Trust that He sees you, He hears you, and He is working all things, even the painful silence, for your good and His glory. This hidden season is not lost time. It is holy ground where the roots of your faith are growing deep, preparing you to bear fruit in the season to come. Rest in that truth today. Rest in His care. The quiet call now is not for you to conjure up strength you don't possess, or to manufacture a cheerfulness that feels foreign to your weary soul. He's not asking for forced optimism. He's asking for surrender, a letting go of your timeline, your expectations, your need to understand the why of the silence. Surrender is not giving up. It is yielding to a greater wisdom, a greater plan, a greater love than your own. It is placing the heavy burden of the unanswered prayer, the aching silence, the nagging doubts into His capable hands. Imagine handing over a tangled knot, your life, your fears, your future, to the Master Weaver. You might not understand how He will untangle it, what pattern He will create, or when the work will be finished. But you trust His skill, His patience, His perfect vision for the tapestry He is creating with your life. This surrender allows you to breathe again, to release the tight grip of control you were never meant to hold. It frees you from the exhausting effort of trying to force an outcome or understand the divine mystery. Think of the disciples in the storm. Jesus was asleep in the boat. Mark 4:38. Silence. While they panicked, fearing for their lives, Jesus was resting in the perfect peace of knowing the Father's will. Their fear stemmed from focusing on the circumstances and the perceived absence or silence of their Master. Their deliverance came not from their own efforts, but from crying out to Him and witnessing His authority over the storm. Your prayer in the silence might feel like a cry into the void, but He is in the boat with you, even if He seems asleep. He is aware. He is capable. Your part is not to calm the storm, but to trust the storm calmer. This trust is not a passive waiting. It is an active reliance. It is choosing to believe His character over your circumstances. It is anchoring your soul to His promises like a ship in turbulent waters, tethered to something solid and unmoving. The promise might not manifest when you expect or how you imagine, but His promises are always true. 2 Corinthians 1:20. They are the bedrock beneath the shifting sands of your emotions and the challenging terrain of your life. So in this moment of silence, this season of waiting, lean into the truth that God is closer than you think. His work is deeper than you can see, and His timing is perfect, though often mysterious. Let the silence teach you patience. Let the waiting refine your trust. Let the unseen work transform your soul. It is in these hidden moments that faith is forged, character is shaped, and a deeper, more resilient relationship with your Creator is built. He is not distant. He is drawing you near, teaching you to walk by faith, not by sight, to listen with your heart, not just your ears, to trust with your spirit, not just your understanding. Embrace the quiet, surrender the control, and rest in the profound peace of simply trusting God always, even when He seems silent. The story is still unfolding. He is still writing, and He is writing a story of faithfulness, resilience, and ultimately of triumph in your life. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough. You stand before a door you desperately need opened. The polished wood feels solid, unyielding. It could be the door to a new job you poured your heart into applying for. The door to healing when pain is a constant companion. The door to resolution in a relationship that feels permanently fractured. You stood here for days, weeks, maybe months. You've knocked. You've prayed until your voice was hoarse, your spirit weary. You fasted, seeking a breakthrough, a sign. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. Maybe you've even tried to force it open yourself, pushing against the frame, jiggling the handle, only to find it rigidly, stubbornly shut. The silence can be deafening. It echoes the walls that stood before ancient Israel at Jericho. They had a clear promise from God, a divine commander leading the way, yet the path forward looked utterly, ridiculously impossible. Walls that seemed to laugh at their marching feet. Our human nature screams in these moments. It demands action, visible progress, the immediate removal of this infuriating obstacle. We look at the shut door and feel forgotten. We feel stuck, like our lives are on hold, rejected by the very future we believe God promised. Confusion creeps in. Why isn't He answering? Did I hear Him wrong? But the spiritual insight waiting in the quiet is profound. God's timing is not a barrier to His plan. It is part of His plan. He doesn't delay because He is slow, uncaring, or absent. He delays because He is sovereign, because He sees everything you cannot. He knows precisely what is necessary before that door swings open, not just what lies behind it. He might be building a quiet strength you didn't know you needed, refining your patience in the kiln of waiting, or strengthening a trust that leans less on visible progress and more on the invisible hand guiding you. Perhaps He is aligning other circumstances you are completely unaware of, or even protecting you from something harmful on the other side of that door that you can't see from where you stand. Consider Abraham and Sarah, clinging to the promise of a son. The decades of waiting refined their faith in ways comfort never could. The delay exposed their human attempts to help God along. Hello, Ishmael, ultimately highlighting God's power and absolute faithfulness when the promise finally arrived. Not when they expected it, but in His perfect time. It wasn't the door opening that built their faith, but the trusting while it remained shut. The call to reflection settles gently upon your spirit. Can you dare to trust that the hand keeping this door shut right now is the very same loving hand that holds your entire future? Is it possible that this waiting isn't denial from God, but divine strategy crafted with infinite wisdom? He who holds the keys to all doors, Revelation 3:7, knows the perfect moment to open this one for you, and when He does, no man can shut it. Until then, your assignment is often not to force the door open with your weary strength, but to rest your hand upon it and trust the keeper. Trust His timing. Trust His heart. Trust that even the stillness serves a purpose in His unfolding story for you. You look around, and it's not where you expected to be. This isn't the promised land. It's the wilderness. Dry, desolate, vast, and uncertain. Every step feels exposed, vulnerable. Perhaps you thought the way forward would be clear, a direct line from liberation to destiny. But instead, You find yourself here, in a place stripped bare of comforts, where the familiar landmarks have vanished. This unexpected detour mirrors an ancient journey. Imagine the Israelites, fresh from the miraculous rescue from Egypt, expecting the express route to Canaan, yet God Himself led them, intentionally, into the wilderness. 40 years they wandered, not by mistake, but by divine design. It was a landscape that tested their patience, amplified their fears, and often echoed with their complaints. They faced hunger, thirst, doubt, and the constant uncertainty of the next day. Yet, it was also the place where they encountered God's most intimate provision. Manna falling from the sky like morning dew, water gushing from a solid rock, His presence a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. The wilderness is God's chosen classroom. It's where He strips away the illusions of self-sufficiency and the distractions that clutter our comfortable lives. In the raw elements, you are left face to face with your deepest dependencies, those you place in your own strength, your resources, your plans, and those you must learn to place solely in Him. Your faith, often hidden in seasons of ease, is exposed and refined under the harsh sun of waiting and uncertainty. This is where character is forged, not in the fertile valleys, but in the barren stretches. It is here you learn to rely on the true bread of life, when every other source of sustenance runs dry. This season of waiting, however parched and lonely it feels, is often a profound preparation ground. God uses the wilderness to teach you endurance you didn't know you possessed, obedience you might otherwise bypass, and the depth of His sustaining power that goes beyond what you could ever ask or imagine. Even Jesus, before stepping into His public ministry, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tested, proving that these difficult passages are essential steps even for the Son of God. This difficult journey is not His final destination for you, but a necessary passage. It's easy to feel lost, forgotten, or punished in the wilderness, but trust that He who led you in is also leading you through. What is God specifically teaching you in this current wilderness season? Is He revealing dependencies on things other than Him that you never realized held such sway? Is He inviting you to find your truest sustenance and peace in His presence alone, even when the future is unclear? Hear the echoes of His provision in this desolate place. He is with you, providing the manna you need for today's journey, just as He did for the Israelites. Trust that the wilderness holds sacred lessons only it can teach. You stand at the edge of your waiting, surveying the landscape of your life. It feels barren, static. You prayed for rain, for a visible sign of growth, for the swift sprouting of hope you planted weeks, months, maybe even years ago. But the surface remains hard, undisturbed. It's easy, isn't it, to feel forgotten in this stillness, to whisper in the quiet, "Is anything happening at all?" You look at others whose gardens seem to flourish overnight, and the feeling of being unseen, of your struggle being unheard, presses down like heavy soil. This is where we often miss the miracle. Think of a seed. Dropped into the dark earth, it vanishes from sight. From the surface, nothing stirs. Days stretch into weeks, and there's no green shoot breaking through. You might feel like that seed, buried, dormant, perhaps even forgotten. But beneath the surface, in the quiet, hidden world you cannot perceive, a profound, life-altering work is unfolding. The seed is swelling, drawing on unseen reserves, breaking open in vulnerability. Sending down roots that search for stability, for nourishment in the unseen currents of the earth. This subterranean struggle, this hidden reaching, is the absolutely critical preparation for everything that is to come above ground. And this is so often exactly what God is doing in us during these seasons of waiting that feel empty or stagnant. While we stare at the unmoving surface of our circumstances, desperate for a sign, He is performing crucial, foundational work deep within the architecture of our souls. He is building resilience, not by removing the pressure, but by strengthening the very structure of our inner person. He is establishing deeper roots of faith, roots that must anchor us in the truth of His character when the winds inevitably come. He is drawing spiritual nourishment from sources we may not even recognize are there, preparing the necessary strength for the harvest that is still unseen. It is a work of depth, not surface appearance. The Scriptures whisper this truth throughout history. Look at Joseph, years in the pit and prison, an unseen season. Yet it was here. Character was refined. Patience was forged. The very wisdom needed to navigate Pharaoh's court was quietly instilled. See Moses, 40 years tending sheep in the desert, a profound shift from prince to shepherd, a stripping away of visible power only to deepen his dependence on the unseen power. Even Jesus Himself spent 30 years in quiet obscurity, growing, learning, preparing before His 3 years of public ministry. The waiting wasn't passive, it was formative. This is the gentle paradox. God often works most powerfully when we see it least. He is less concerned with your immediate comfort or the appearance of rapid progress on the surface, and infinitely more invested in the depth of your foundation, the strength of the roots being established. The waiting isn't empty time to be endured. It is holy time, formative time, designed specifically for this critical work underground. So ask yourself in this hidden season, what roots might God be patiently growing in you? How is He strengthening your inner person, drawing you deeper into His presence, preparing you for the harvest you cannot yet see? Trust the unseen process. The roots must go deep, anchoring you firmly in Him before the tree can bear the fruit He intends. The calendar pages turn, but the promised dawn remains a distant blur. You know this ache, this deep weariness that settles in your chest, heavy and persistent. It's the sickness Proverbs 13:12 names, the corrosive effect of hope deferred. You poured out your heart, laid bare your deepest longings before the throne, perhaps fasted, certainly waited with fervent expectation. You felt the stirring of faith, the flicker of belief that this time the breakthrough was imminent. Yet the horizon remains empty. The outcome you longed for, the answer you anticipated, is nowhere in sight. It feels like standing on a shore, scanning the vast ocean for a ship you were told was coming, the sea stretching endlessly, mirroring the long, unanswered stretch of time. This isn't just impatience. It's a profound spiritual test. It's the quiet erosion of confidence, the whispered doubt, questioning if you heard God right, if your faith was enough, if perhaps, just perhaps, God has forgotten your little corner of the world. This long waiting echoes through biblical history. Consider the generations yearning for the Messiah, clinging to ancient prophecies as empires rose and fell. Think of Israel in Babylonian exile, singing sorrowful songs by foreign rivers, the promise of return feeling like a cruel taunt across decades. Their hope was deferred, heartsick, tested in the crucible of time and silence. This feeling of being suspended, of life being on hold while you wait, can feel like a wilderness journey you never signed up for. Dry, desolate, faith finning like desert water. Yet within this painful pause lies a profound, often hidden, divine purpose. God doesn't defer hope out of indifference, but often out of infinite wisdom, seeking not just to give us the gift, but to purify our hearts and anchor them to the giver himself. The tree of life promised as the fulfillment of desire in Proverbs 13:12 is ultimately not the thing we receive, but the relationship we deepen with the one who is the source of all true life. God uses the waiting to gently pry our white-knuckle grip from the desired outcome and recenter our gaze on His unwavering character, His unfailing love, His perfect timing. The sickness of deferred hope becomes, paradoxically, the path to profound healing, leading us away from idols of expectation towards the living God. It's in the barren spaces of waiting that we often discover God is our true sustenance, not just the answer we sought. This season invites a quiet, vulnerable reflection. Where is your hope truly anchored today? Is it rooted in the specific thing you desire, the healing, the job, the relationship, the relief? Or is it sinking deeper into the fertile ground of God's promise to be faithful, to be present, to work all things for your good, even when His methods feel slow and unseen? Can you find strength not in the imminent arrival of the desired outcome, but in the enduring, unshakable nature of the one who holds all outcomes in His hands? Let the ache in your heart be a compass pointing you not towards despair, but deeper into the arms of the only one who can transform deferred hope into an enduring tree of life, rooted in Him. You sit with the quiet ache of expectation. The desire flares hot in your chest, followed by the cold splash of reality. Nothing has changed. You have prayed, you have worked, you have waited. Yet the answer, the breakthrough, the shift, feels as distant as a star. Impatience taps a restless rhythm against your soul, whispering fears. Will it ever happen? Has God forgotten? Is this delay a denial? It feels like being stuck in a long gray corridor with no visible door. Imagine, for a moment, a farmer. He carefully prepares the soil, chooses his finest seeds, and plants them with hope in the earth. He waters, he tends, he does everything within his power. But then he waits. He cannot command the sun to blaze hotter, nor the rain to fall faster. He cannot force the seed to sprout before its time, nor the harvest to ripen overnight. His work is done, and now the process belongs to something unseen. The intricate dance of nature, the mysterious work happening beneath the surface. He must trust the cycle. He must trust the timing that is beyond his control. This farmer's waiting is a powerful parable for us. We do our part. We pray, we obey, we work diligently towards the vision God has placed in our hearts. But the growth, the outcome, the perfect timing of the harvest, that remains squarely in God's hands. The book of James understands this deeply. It urges us, "Be patient, therefore, brothers, until the coming of the Lord." See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth, being patient about it until it receives the early and the late rains. James 5:7. This divine patience is not a limp, passive resignation. It is an active waiting, rooted deeply in unwavering faith and persistent hope. It is continuing to water the ground, continuing to pray, continuing to take the next faithful step, even when the fruit is nowhere in sight. It is the quiet strength that says, "I don't see it yet, but I trust the gardener." The profound spiritual insight here is that God often uses these very seasons of waiting to cultivate something precious within us: patience. It is a fruit of the Spirit, listed alongside love, joy, and peace in Galatians 5:22-23. Patience isn't just enduring delay. It's developing a quality that mirrors God's own enduring, steadfast character. It's a deep trust that His timing is perfect, even when it feels impossibly slow. It's learning to see the delay not as a punishment or a denial, but as a sacred development ground. Perhaps the fastest growth happens in the slowest seasons. Waiting isn't emptiness. It's often the sacred space where God prepares the harvest in ways we cannot see. It is essential for navigating life's storms and being truly ready to receive God's promises when they arrive. So, how can you actively practice this divine patience right now, in the midst of your own waiting season? Can you find ways to lean into the stillness, viewing the waiting not as a pause in life, but as a vital part of the journey itself, an opportunity to grow in this Christ-like virtue? Ask God to strengthen your spiritual root system of patience. Ask Him for the grace to trust His unseen work beneath the soil of your circumstances. Ask for the courage to keep watering, even when the ground feels dry, trusting that the harvest will come at His appointed time. Trust the quiet process. Trust the divine gardener. You feel the weight of waiting, like heavy chains around your spirit. Each sunrise brings no new promise, only the familiar landscape of delay, of doors that remain stubbornly shut. Maybe you've been sold out, betrayed by those closest to you, or falsely accused, finding yourself in a metaphorical pit, stripped bare of comfort and hope. The walls feel high, the darkness deep, and the whispers of doubt echo in the silence, asking, "Has God forgotten?" Consider Joseph, thrown into a literal pit by his own brothers, sold into slavery, then cast into prison despite his faithfulness. His life wasn't a straightforward path to destiny. It was a winding trail through wilderness and confinement. He sat in that pit, then labored in a foreign land, then endured years behind bars. Closed door after closed door, crushing delay upon crushing delay. Yet even in the deepest pit, even within the cold, unyielding stones of the prison cell, God was intricately weaving His plan. Joseph didn't lose his integrity. He lived it out in the darkest places. His wisdom wasn't stifled. It flourished as he managed Potiphar's house and later the prison itself. His ability to interpret dreams, a gift from God, became the key to his release. A gift he carried not despite his circumstances, but refined within them. He learned patience in the long years of waiting, leadership, managing the affairs of others, and a profound reliance on God when human help failed. These weren't easy lessons. They were forged in the fire of adversity, hammered out on the anvil of injustice. The spiritual truth resounding from Joseph's journey is this: God's preparation for His great calling on your life often involves seasons of obscurity, difficulty, and waiting. The character, resilience, spiritual depth, and practical skills needed for the palace moments, the seasons of influence, favor, and fulfilled purpose, are not found on the mountaintop. They are often deeply, painfully, and beautifully forged in the pit and the prison. Your season of waiting isn't a cosmic detour. It is the path God has orchestrated to prepare you. He is strategically positioning you, refining your spirit, teaching you dependence on Him alone, and building within you the very qualities you will need for the destiny He has planned. A destiny far grander than you might imagine when you feel stuck, overlooked, or forgotten. Don't despise the waiting. Lean into it. Don't resent the difficulty. Ask what God is cultivating within you because of it. Take a quiet moment now. Look at your current season of waiting or challenge. How might God be using this very difficulty, this seeming pit or prison, to prepare you for what's next? What lessons in character, faith, dependence, or resilience are being etched onto your soul in this season of limitation or obscurity? Trust that His hand is orchestrating your steps even when the path feels excruciatingly painful, confusing, or endlessly delayed. He is with you in the pit, and He is preparing you for the palace. You look at your life right now, and it feels like chaos, like tangled threads, knotted and messy, on the back of a tapestry. You see the confusion, the unanswered questions piled high, the painful threads woven in with no discernible pattern. This job loss, this unexpected health battle, this season of waiting that stretches on and on. From where you sit, it makes no sense. It just feels wrong, a jumbled mess with no beauty, no purpose visible to your eyes. This is the struggle when our limited perspective collides with a reality we didn't choose, a story we didn't write. But imagine, just for a moment, stepping around to the other side, the front of the tapestry. There, the threads you saw as random knots are part of an intricate design. The harsh colors you questioned blend into a beautiful, intentional pattern. The chaos transforms into a masterpiece, woven with skill and purpose. This is God's perspective. His thoughts are not your thoughts. His ways are not your ways, declares the Lord. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so are His ways higher than yours, His thoughts higher than yours. Isaiah 55:8-9. Our minds grasp for logic, for immediate solutions, for a linear path we can understand and control. His mind encompasses the eternal, the cosmic, the intricate dance of billions of lives and purposes across time and space. He sees the finished work while we are still in the messy middle. He is the divine weaver, and He is working with threads we cannot yet comprehend. Spiritual insight whispers that trusting God in these seasons means surrendering our limited sight for His infinite vision. It means believing He is creating a picture of breathtaking beauty, even when all we can perceive are the knotted threads and jarring colors. It means finding peace not in understanding the why, but in trusting the who. It is a quiet act of defiance against the anxiety that demands clarity now. It is choosing faith over our fear of the unknown. Sometimes, the clearest vision of God's plan requires us to close our eyes to our own understanding. Can you loosen your grip on needing to see the front of the tapestry right now? Can you release the burden of trying to untangle the knots and fix the perceived mess yourself? Can you shift your gaze from the chaotic threads before you to the divine weaver above you, confident in His skill, His love, His ultimate purpose? Trusting His perspective is not passive resignation. It is active faith that rests in the certainty of His sovereign goodness, knowing that one day you will see the masterpiece He was creating all along. Fix your eyes on the weaver and let the messy back of the tapestry fade into the promise of His perfect design. The clock ticks slower now. Each second feels like an hour, each day an eternity. You sit with the weariness, the sheer, draining weight of waiting. It saps your energy, wears down the edges of your resolve, leaving you feeling not just weak, but profoundly vulnerable. Maybe it's for a prayer to be answered, a situation to change, a door to open, or simply for clarity in the fog. This waiting isn't a neutral space. It's a battlefield for your spirit, where doubt whispers its insidious questions, and hope feels like a fragile ember flickering in a harsh wind. You wonder if you can keep going, if the strength you had yesterday will see you through the silence of today. This is the quiet struggle so many face, the hidden fight waged in the stillness of unanswered prayers and delayed outcomes. It's the wilderness of the soul, where provision seems scarce and the path ahead is lost in the shimmering heat haze of uncertainty. Yet into this arid landscape, the Bible breathes a promise like a sudden cool spring. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Isaiah 40:31. This isn't merely beautiful poetry designed to make waiting sound less awful. It is a profound spiritual reality, an invitation to a different kind of strength. Waiting on God is not the same as passively waiting for a delivery. It is an active posture of reliance, a deliberate fixing of your hope upon Him who is faithful. It means seeking His presence even when His hand feels distant, allowing the truth of who He is to anchor your soul in the turbulence. Think of that eagle. It doesn't power its way through the sky by sheer force alone. It yields to the invisible, powerful currents of the wind, allowing itself to be lifted, carried, and sustained by a force far greater than its own effort. This is the spiritual parallel. When you surrender your exhaustion, your depleted reserves, and your frayed patience to God in the waiting, you yield to a power designed to lift you. His strength isn't just given after the trial is over. It is renewed in the very midst of it. It is in your deepest weakness, when you feel you have nothing left, that His power finds its perfect expression. 2 Corinthians 12:9. The waiting becomes a strange, sacred space where you stop trying to generate your own energy and instead draw deeply from the inexhaustible well of His divine strength. Here, in the quiet act of trusting reliance, you find a rest that is more invigorating than sleep, a renewal for your soul that allows you to keep running, keep walking, keep mounting up. Sometimes, the deepest strength is found not in pushing harder, but in yielding completely. The greatest movement upward comes not from frantic flapping, but from surrendered stillness upon the wind of His Spirit. So, in this moment, whatever you are waiting for, whatever is wearing you down, consider this quiet call to reflection. How can you shift from merely passively waiting for the outcome to actively waiting on the Lord? What does it genuinely look like for you right now to mount up with wings like eagles, to surrender your very real weakness, your fatigue, your doubt, to His immeasurable strength? It is in that surrender, in that active reliance, that the renewal begins. The silence presses in, heavy and long. You've been waiting, maybe for an answer, a breakthrough, a sign that you haven't been forgotten in this quiet season. The present feels all-consuming, its muted tones threatening to overshadow every vibrant hue of God's past faithfulness in your life. Doubt, a subtle thief, whispers that perhaps this time is different, that the well of His goodness has run dry just for you In this moment, it's easy to let the immediate overshadow the eternal, the current struggle blot out the history of His grace. But the ancient wisdom calls you back. The psalmist, caught in his own crucible of questioning, knew this battle of the soul. He didn't stay lost in the present despair. He chose remembrance. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your work and meditate on your mighty deeds. Psalm 77, 11-12. This wasn't a passive recollection. It was an active, intentional turning of the mind towards God's track record. It's a spiritual discipline, a holy habit of looking back to build strength for moving forward. Think of it. Remembering how He parted the Red Sea isn't just recalling an ancient miracle. It's remembering that oceans obey His voice. Remembering manna from heaven isn't just a Sunday school story. It's remembering His provision in the barren wilderness. Remembering Goliath's folly isn't just about a sling and a stone. It's remembering that giants are nothing to the God of angel armies. Jesus calming the storm, the resurrection itself, these aren't relics of the past. They are living testaments to an unchanging character, a power that knows no limit, a love that never fails. Sometimes the greatest courage for the present comes from the deepest memory of the past. This act of remembering is your anchor in the storm. It's letting the undeniable weight of His past faithfulness settle into your heart, pushing back the tide of present fear. If He stepped into that impossible situation, if He provided that unexpected way, if He healed that deep wound, why would He abandon you now? His history is not just a record of events. It's a revelation of His nature. He was faithful then, He is faithful now, and He will be faithful in the future. His track record is perfect. The waiting doesn't negate His past deeds. It highlights the need to lean on them. Take a quiet moment now. Breathe deeply. Intentionally call to mind the ways God has shown up for you. List them, big and small. The unexpected blessing, the door that opened, the protection you didn't see, the peace that surpassed understanding, the hope that flickered back to life. Write them down if you can. Then, meditate on one of those biblical stories of intervention, the one that speaks loudest to your current need. Let the remembrance of His mighty deeds become the fuel for your hope. Let the history of His faithfulness anchor your heart in the waiting, transforming silent fear into steadfast trust. You sit in the quiet space of your waiting, the silence stretching like an endless horizon. The calendar pages turn, seasons shift, and still, the answer you prayed for, the breakthrough you anticipated, remains just beyond what you can see. Doubt whispers a dry wind across a weary land, asking if hope was a foolish gamble. The real-world fears press in, anxiety about the unknown outcome, the ache of delay, the creeping sense that maybe, just maybe, this time, God isn't moving. This is the wilderness of the unseen, a place many have walked before you, but the ancient wisdom speaks a different language to this quiet struggle. It calls this place the proving ground of faith, not the graveyard of hope. Hebrews 11:1 paints the picture. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. Assurance, conviction. These aren't timid whispers. They are declarations. Assurance is a solid title deed, a guarantee in your spirit that the thing you hope for, the promise God gave, is real, even though it exists only in the future or in the spiritual realm right now. Conviction is the deep, unshakable inner certainty about realities invisible to your physical eyes. It's believing the blueprint before the building is finished. It's standing on the promise when the landscape looks barren. Consider the heroes of faith in that very chapter. Abraham leaving home for a land he'd only heard about. Noah building an ark for rain he'd never seen. Moses leading millions towards a promise he wouldn't enter. They didn't see the end from the beginning. They acted as if God's word was absolutely true, even when circumstances screamed the opposite, even when years turned into decades. They persevered because, like Moses, they saw him who is invisible. Hebrews 11:27. Their faith was the spiritual lens through which they perceived a reality, deeper and more powerful than the immediate difficulty. This spiritual insight changes everything about waiting. It transforms it from a passive void of doing nothing into an active exercise of believing. It's where your faith is tested, yes, sometimes pruned back like a vine, but ultimately strengthened, proven real, like gold refined by fire. It's not faith in the discomfort of waiting, but faith in God's unchanging character and unfailing promises during the waiting. Your assurance isn't about the timeline, it's about the author of time. Your conviction isn't about the visibility of the outcome, it's about the reliability of the one who promised it. Faith becomes the powerful lens that allows you to see beyond the current storm to the rainbow God has set in the sky, even if it's not visible yet. It allows you to act today, not based on what you see, but on the certainty of what God has said. How can you activate this assurance today, allowing this conviction of the unseen to shape your perspective? What specific promise of God can you hold on to with this unwavering confidence, letting it transform your actions and expectations right there in the heart of the waiting? She sits by the window, tracing patterns on the condensation-streaked glass, the world outside a blur matching the haze in her own heart. You know this feeling. It's the tight knot in your stomach when the calendar pages flip too quickly, the silent scream inside when the deadline looms and the answer hasn't arrived. You whispered your prayer, maybe even shouted it into the lonely quiet of your room. You laid it out for God, clear and specific. Lord, I need this job offer by next Friday. God, please heal them before the surgery date. I need this financial breakthrough this month. You came to the divine architect with your blueprints, not just for the what, but for the when. And the silence that follows feels like a cosmic shrug, a deafening void where the timely miracle should have been. This is where the anxiety seeds find fertile ground, watered by disappointment and the fear that maybe God didn't hear, or worse, doesn't care about your schedule, your pressing need. You clutch your preferred timeline like a precious, fragile bird, terrified to let it fly, terrified that releasing it means losing control entirely. This wrestling isn't new. It's etched into the human condition, this desire to manage outcomes, to control the uncontrollable. Even the Son of God, in the olive grove under the weight of the world's sin, felt the stark reality of a timeline that was not his own. He knew the path ahead, the suffering, the separation from the Father. His human heart cried out, wishing for another way, another time. But in that moment of ultimate agony, a profound surrender echoed through the trees. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Luke 22:42. This isn't just a verse. It's the posture of true trust in action. Jesus wasn't saying his plan was bad, or that he didn't have a valid desire. He was acknowledging a higher wisdom, a perfect plan that transcended his immediate, understandable longing for relief. He was surrendering not just the outcome, his death, but the method and the moment to the Father's sovereign will. This is the spiritual truth that can unlock the shackles of our anxiety. Peace in waiting often descends when you fully surrender the timeline to God. It feels counterintuitive. Giving up control feels like falling into chaos. But what if releasing your grip on the when and how is actually the act of falling into the safest hands in the universe? God's wisdom is infinite. Yours, though precious, is finite. His perspective spans eternity. Yours is bound by the ticking clock on the wall. What you perceive as a delay might be His divine protection from a path you shouldn't take. His careful preparation building something sturdy within you or for you, or part of a breathtakingly beautiful, intricate plan far larger than you can currently grasp. You see a closed door. He sees a necessary detour leading to an open field you didn't know existed. Choosing to trust God's sovereignty over your own urgency is a daily, moment-by-moment decision. It's letting go of the frantic need to orchestrate every detail and leaning back into the truth that He is already orchestrating. It doesn't mean you stop praying or hoping or working. It means you do all those things with open hands, trusting that the when and how are held by one who loves you with an unfailing love, who works all things, even delays and detours, for your good and His glory. Are you holding tightly to your preferred timeline today? Can you feel the tension in your shoulders, the clenching in your jaw, born from trying to force God into your box of how soon and how exactly? What would it look like, just for this moment, to unclench your fists, to intentionally open your hands and place the when and the how of your deepest longings, your most urgent needs, into His? It's a scary step into a holy unknown, but freedom whispers just beyond that fear. Speak the words that echoed in Gethsemane, not just as a recitation, but as a heartfelt release. Not my will, but yours be done. Allow His peace, a peace that makes no logical sense in the face of uncertainty, to settle deep within you as you release control. It's not about accepting defeat. It's about embracing divine victory on a timeline only He fully understands. Trust that He is moving, even when the clock feels frozen. His delay is not denial. It might just be the most intricate part of His perfect design. The prayer was offered, earnest and raw, sent heavenward on a desperate wing. You believed then, truly believed, that the miracle was poised to unfold. The faith felt like a river, strong and sure. But then, the waiting began. Not just a few days, but weeks, months. The river of faith slowed to a trickle, then seemed to disappear into a dry, dusty riverbed. The promise felt distant, the hoped-for answer like a mirage shimmering on a far horizon. It's easy to feel like God was there at the beginning, listening intently when you poured out your heart, or that He'll show up dramatically at the end when the answer finally bursts through like dawn after a long night. But what about the middle? The agonizing, slow-moving middle, filled with unanswered questions and persistent challenges. This is where the enemy of your soul loves to whisper. He tells you God has forgotten. He tells you your faith wasn't enough. He tells you you're walking this desolate road utterly alone. But the truth, The profound, unshakable truth is that God is most powerfully, most intimately present in the middle. He doesn't always lift you out of the fire immediately. Sometimes He steps into the fire with you. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego facing the terrifying heat of Nebuchadnezzar's furnace simply because they refused to bow to an idol. They didn't ask for exemption from the fire. They declared God could deliver them, but even if He didn't, they still wouldn't compromise. Thrown into the flames, bound and helpless, they weren't consumed. When the king peered into the inferno, expecting ash, he saw 4 figures walking unharmed in the heart of the fire. The 4th figure like a son of the gods. God didn't prevent them from entering the trial. He entered it with them. He didn't remove the circumstance. He transformed their experience within it. The heat was still there, but the presence of the divine cooled the intensity, broke the bonds, and turned a place of execution into a walk with God. This is the spiritual insight that breathes hope into your waiting. God's faithfulness isn't just in the deliverance from the storm, but in His unwavering presence in the storm. He walks with you through the valley of shadows, His rod and staff comforting you. He is the quiet assurance in the tempest, the steady hand in the shaking. His presence in the very midst of your trial, in the uncertainty, the pain, the fear, is often the greatest source of comfort, strength, and inexplicable peace you will ever know. You are not alone in this season. The Lord is with you, a constant, loving companion, closer than your own skin. Can you sense His presence with you right now, even in the midst of your wait? Perhaps you don't feel a thunderous declaration, but can you trust the quiet promise that He will never leave you nor forsake you, ever? Hebrews 13:5. Ask Him, softly, honestly, to reveal His nearness to you in this specific season, in this particular waiting place. His presence is the miracle in the middle. You sit in the silence, the calendar pages turning with agonizing slowness. The thing you pray for, the change you desperately need, the door you long to see open, it hasn't arrived. You feel it deep in your bones, the heavy cloak of waiting. It feels less like patience and more like being placed on a shelf, dusty and unproductive. Your life, it seems, is on pause, waiting for the main act to begin. You tell yourself, I can't really live, or serve, or step into who I'm meant to be, until this season is over, until it finally happens. The waiting feels like a barren landscape, devoid of growth or purpose. But lean in closer. Listen not to the ticking clock, but to the quiet rhythm of God's design. The biblical narrative whispers a different truth about seasons of delay. Waiting doesn't mean dormant. It is rarely, if ever, a call to passive idleness. Think of John the Baptist, the voice crying in the wilderness. He spent 30 years in relative obscurity, living a life set apart before his dramatic entrance onto the scene. Was he dormant? No, he was being forged in solitude, steeped in discernment, his spirit being prepared for the fire of his calling. Consider Jesus Himself. Years, silent years, passed in Nazareth, not captured in bustling narratives, not performing miracles daily, just living, growing, learning, submitting to the ordinary rhythm of life and the Father's quiet preparation. He wasn't on hold. He was living fully in the present moment given to him. The profound spiritual insight is this: your season of waiting is not a pause from your life. It is a part of your life. God has divine purpose woven into the fabric of today, precisely where you are, amidst the uncertainty and the quiet. Even in the waiting, you are invited to live. You are called to faithfulness in this present moment. You can still pour out love, extend grace, serve the person right beside you, cultivate your spirit, learn the lessons God is teaching you now, and glorify His name through your simple obedience today. The waiting season is not an empty space to endure, but a sacred ground for present growth. Don't put the richness of your life on hold, tethered only to a future outcome. What is God inviting you to do, to learn, to become in this very moment without needing the waiting to end first? Find His active purpose for you in the beautiful, sometimes challenging, present. Let your waiting be fertile ground, not a dusty shelf. You've prayed the prayer until the words feel thin. You've circled the mountain again, the promise still unseen on the horizon. Doubt whispers, cold and sharp, asking if God even heard, if He even cares about the timeline you've meticulously planned. It feels like waiting by a silent phone, the critical call never ringing, while the clock ticks past the point of reason. You've hit your last minute. The crisis is here, and rescue seems impossibly far away. Your heart aches, questioning the delay, measuring God's faithfulness by the speed of His answer. But look at the pages turned yellow with time, etched with stories of divine appointments kept, not on human schedules, but on God's perfect clock. Think of Lazarus. 4 days in the tomb. 4 days the sisters wept, hope dwindling like an oil lamp low on fuel. 4 days seemed like an agonizing delay, a missed opportunity for an easy miracle. But Jesus waited. He waited until death had sealed its claim, until decay had begun its work. Why? So that when He called Lazarus forth, bound in grave clothes, walking back into the sun, there would be no doubt, no room for medical marvels or lucky timing. It was the power of resurrection, unmistakable, undeniable, revealing God's glory in the face of absolute impossibility. Consider the disciples, tossed on a Galilean storm, rowing against relentless waves all through the long dark night. Every muscle strained, fear a cold knot in their stomachs. Where was Jesus? He was on the mountain, praying. He didn't calm the storm in the first watch, or the second, or the third. He came in the fourth watch, when human strength was spent, when their boat was battered, when hope of making it to shore on their own had vanished. He walked on the water, proving His dominion over creation, precisely when they felt most helpless. His appearance wasn't just rescue. It was a revelation of His divine nature, a lesson taught in the teeth of the gale. He meets you in your deepest struggle, at the moment when His power will shine brightest against the backdrop of your need. Remember the widow of Zarephath, preparing what she believed was her final meal for herself and her son, resigned to a quiet, heartbreaking death. The drought had claimed everything. She was at the absolute end of her resources. Then Elijah arrived. Not days before, not when she had a little left. Right when she had only a handful of flour and a little oil, enough for one last act of surrender. God provided through her obedience, multiplying the meager supply. His timing wasn't early enough to prevent the fear, but it was perfect enough to prove His miraculous provision through scarcity. These weren't arbitrary delays. They were divine orchestrations, designed to magnify His glory and deepen faith in ways immediate intervention couldn't have. God waits until His hand is the only explanation, until His power is undeniable, until the miracle is not just the solution, but the timing of the solution itself. His delay is not denial. Sometimes, His waiting is His way of setting the stage for a greater display of His power than you could have imagined. It is a quiet paradox. The slower the human clock ticks, the louder God's sovereignty is revealed. This is the miracle of His timing. Can you shift your gaze from the frustrating gap between your prayer and His answer, and instead anticipate the breathtaking way God will reveal His glory because He waited? Can you lean into the uncomfortable stillness, trusting that when God moves, it will be at the precisely right moment, orchestrated for His greatest glory and your ultimate eternal good? His timing isn't measured by your urgency, but by His perfect plan unfolding. Trust that process. Trust Him. The days stretch out like a long, empty road. You look ahead, straining for a glimpse of the destination, but the horizon remains frustratingly distant. The weight of what isn't yet presses down. The prayer unanswered, the door still closed, the healing not here. In this space between promise and fulfillment, the heart can easily grow weary, focusing on the ache of what is missing, whispering, "If only." This longing, if unchecked, breeds a quiet restlessness, a subtle erosion of joy that steals the light from your present moment. It's the feeling that peace is postponed until the circumstances change, that happiness is waiting just around the bend, just over the next hill. But what if the secret wasn't in reaching the destination, but in discovering a hidden treasure on the road itself? Consider Paul, chained in a Roman prison. Not a comfortable waiting room, but a place of confinement, uncertainty, and separation from the very ministry that fueled his life. Yet, from this unlikely cell, he penned words that echo through centuries. "I have learned, in whatever situation I am, to be content." Philippians 4:11. This wasn't a casual observation. It was a hard-won truth, forged in the fire of adversity and waiting. He didn't say, "I am content because things are finally okay," or "I'm content when I get out." He declared, "I have learned in whatever situation." This wasn't a natural state for him. Like anyone, he longed for freedom, for fellowship, for the chance to preach the gospel without chains. But he unearthed a radical spiritual insight. Contentment isn't a byproduct of favorable circumstances. It is a learned posture of the heart, deliberately cultivated and deeply rooted in Christ. Learning contentment in the waiting doesn't mean denying the difficulty or pretending the struggle isn't real. It means finding peace and even joy within the very circumstances you wish would change. It's not about the absence of waiting or trial. It's about the presence of God in the midst of it. The profound shift happens when you turn your gaze from the swirling dust of your unmet desires and fix it on the immovable rock of who God is and what you already possess in Him. You look away from the perceived lack in your outer life and toward the immeasurable abundance stored up for you in Christ. His unwavering presence, His boundless love that surrounds you like a fortress, His unfailing promises that stand firm as ancient mountains, and His all-sufficient grace that is enough, always enough. This learning process is precisely why God often leads His children through seasons of waiting, through the wilderness, where resources seem scarce and the path unclear. Just as the Israelites learned dependence on daily manna, we learn that true satisfaction doesn't come from having everything we want when we want it, but from having Him. These periods of divine delay or difficult circumstance are not punishments, they are classrooms. They are opportunities to dig deeper roots into the truth of God's character, to discover that He is faithful not just when He gives, but also when He withholds or asks us to wait. This kind of contentment is a powerful, countercultural witness to a world chasing fleeting pleasures and external validation. While the world sees limitation and laments, the one who has learned contentment in Christ radiates a peace that defies understanding. A peace found not in the ease of the journey, but in the quiet certainty of the one walking alongside. This learned contentment acts as a powerful fortress against the twin enemies of anxiety and discouragement that prowl in the spaces of waiting. When your peace is anchored in your circumstances, it will inevitably be tossed about by every wave. But when your peace is anchored in Christ, you can stand firm, even when the storm rages. You can experience a gentle paradox, finding inner spaciousness and freedom even when outwardly confined, discovering rich satisfaction in the midst of perceived emptiness. It's not resignation, it's profound trust. It's believing that God is at work, even when you cannot see the pattern He is weaving. Trusting that His sufficiency meets your every need, even the need for patience and peace in the long haul. So, gently, quietly, ask yourself in the stillness, am I allowing the waiting season I am in to steal my peace and diminish my joy? Is my focus fixated on what I feel is lacking in my circumstances, or am I intentionally looking towards the abundance I already possess in God, His love, His promises, His very presence? What would it truly look like, right where you are today, to practice this learned posture of contentment? It might be choosing gratitude for the small things. It might be releasing the frantic need to control the timeline. It might be sitting in quiet trust, repeating God's promises like a soothing balm. Ask God, sincerely, from the depths of your heart, to teach you this secret Paul discovered: the profound peace of being content in every situation, knowing, truly knowing, that His strength is more than enough for you. Sufficient for this day, sufficient for this wait. You lean back now, maybe in your chair, maybe just inside your soul, feeling the weight of the journey, the waiting, the wrestling, the quiet ache of unanswered questions. It all sits here with you, a landscape etched onto the heart. You've walked through the silence that felt like abandonment, navigated the wilderness where direction seemed lost, sensed the unseen work happening deep beneath the surface of your life, enduring the testing of hope that feels like walking on water with shaky knees. You've learned, maybe reluctantly, the slow forging of patience, felt the anchor of remembering His past faithfulness, practiced the challenging act of faith when sight offered no reassurance, surrendered, piece by piece, the timeline you so desperately clung to. You have glimpsed, even in the darkest corners, the quiet, persistent presence of God right in the middle of it all, and heard the call to live faithfully, not in the future, but in the demanding present. You have seen, perhaps unexpectedly, the subtle miracle of His timing, and tasted, sometimes bitterly, the slow, difficult sweetness of learning contentment, not after the storm, but within it. And after all this, the core message remains, vibrating through the very fibers of your being. God is sovereign. He is deeply, overwhelmingly loving, and He is actively, relentlessly working for your good and His immense glory, even, especially, when you cannot see or feel the slightest evidence of it. His hand is moving behind the veil. He holds the beginning of your story, the tangled, messy middle, and the triumphant, perfect end, all within the grasp of His knowing hands. Your waiting, precious one, is not a sign of His neglect. It is rarely punishment. More often than not, it is a sacred invitation. An invitation to deeper intimacy with the one who knows you better than you know yourself. An invitation to a stronger, more resilient faith that doesn't depend on circumstances. An invitation to profound character formation, chipping away at the rough edges, polishing you into the image of His Son. He is not late. The clock in heaven operates on a different rhythm than the urgent pulse of earth. He is orchestrating details you cannot fathom, weaving together threads from a tapestry you cannot possibly see from your vantage point. He is building you, refining you, positioning you exactly where you need to be for His perfect plan to unfold. Not just for you, but often for the lives of others He will touch through you. The silence wasn't emptiness, it was space. Space for His quiet, deep work to happen without the distraction of noise. The closed doors weren't rejection. They were often a divine redirection, steering you away from paths that weren't meant for you, or a gentle protection from dangers you couldn't see. The delays weren't denial of your deepest needs. They were divine timing, preparing the ground, aligning the stars, perfecting the moment. Sometimes the answer is waiting for you to be ready, or for others involved to be ready, or simply for His glory to be most brightly revealed in the waiting. Remember the seed beneath the soil, seemingly buried, forgotten, lifeless. Yet life is happening there, unseen, powerful, preparing for breakthrough. Remember Joseph, betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten. His journey through the pit and the prison was the path to the palace. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thrown into the fiery furnace. He was in the fire with them, not taking them out of it immediately, but proving His presence within it. You are not abandoned in your furnace. You are not forgotten in your pit. You are held. You are seen. You are loved with an everlasting love that defies comprehension. Continue to trust the unseen hand that is guiding your steps, even when they falter, even when the path ahead is shrouded in mist. Continue to fix your eyes not on the shifting landscape of your circumstances, but on Jesus, the author and perfecter of your faith. He endured His own season of waiting, of suffering, of silence before the ultimate victory, and He did it with perfect trust in His Father's plan. He understands the weight you carry. Your story is still being written, not by chance, not by circumstance, but by the master storyteller Himself, whose narratives are always leading to redemption and glory. Let this truth settle deep within your soul, like rain soaking into parched earth. God is trustworthy in the waiting. He is profoundly present in the silence. He is faithful always. Even in the deepest quiet, in the moments when His voice feels distant, His presence is still there, singing over you. A lullaby of hope in the darkness, a promise of His unfailing, unending love that will carry you through. They didn't see the end, not the full picture, not the how or the when, but they trusted the author of the story. And in the end, that was enough.